Welcome, everyone, to the Know the Rules of the Game podcast. I'm Desiree Patno. I'm your host. I'm the CEO and president of Women in Housing and Real Estate Ecosystem. I'm here to welcome you to the series we have in January 2020 regarding the Human Trafficking Awareness Month. I'm so excited to have our guests. Today we have Joshua Travers. Welcome, Joshua, to our podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
You're quite welcome. So a little bit about what we're going to be discussing today is that on the Know the Rules of the Game podcast, we're really featuring invigorating and open discussions with key executive leaders and experts on recent trends and developments in the housing and real estate ecosystem as we're talking about land, anything that has to do with quality of life and land. And what we do is we're bringing intimate discussions with peers, family, and friends that will make listeners feel a part of the conversation. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us today. A little bit about myself. I am the CEO and president of NAWRB and also my real estate brokerage. Been in business for over 30 years as an advisor and investor. Also working for Amiga's Brain, AI for Aging Population. I'm the Chief Strategic Officer for Zulu Time, which is a holistic training center for transitional training center for veterans. I'm also the publisher and a national speaker for the network of Wealth of Knowledges across a vast economic footprint. Been working, as I said, in the space for over 30 years, and I bring my executive expertise to social impact, gender equality, and access to capital. And we provide personalized advisory services to the real estate and family office community. I reside in several panels and also boards and councils throughout the ecosystem, a lot of them having to do with gender lens, women impacting public policy being one. So today, as I mentioned before, we're really going to be talking about the human trafficking and what that looks like. And so Joshua, as far as what we got going on, I'd like to do a little bit of introduction about you so they can have a framework. Absolutely impressive. This is the first time I've actually got to talk and meet with Joshua. So I want to be very candid, open here. I mean, talk about an impressive background. You served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 2007, 2015. You also served in Iraq. You're now you've been a private investigator since 2004. And you also work as a case manager for Saved in America, besides being on the board for the National Association for Missing and Exploited Children. You've spoken all over the country regarding this, and as someone very eloquently told me a while ago, we're bringing the dark secrets out to the forefront. You know, people don't like to talk about something like this as a subject matter, but we need to know it's happening all over the place. So welcome to the board, and welcome to the podcast, and thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Excellent. So one of the things we like to do is as I mentioned before the call, is that we like to talk about something unique and different and something that no one else knows about you. And I've given you a whole 10 minutes to think about it. So if you were to paraphrase something that would be so mind-blowing, shocking about something that you've done or something that's happened or something that you believe in or love, what would that be?
Women's wrestling. I actually started the Liberty University women's wrestling program and cultured 3 national champions.
Whoa! I love it. So how did you get involved coaching? Are you involved in the actual tenacity to making sure that they can protect themselves?
What it started as was I was an All-American wrestler for Liberty University after the Marines. And I was coaching the men's team, and our managers, usually they're females that want to be a team manager. They come through and they organize everything. But I knew one of them was a 2-time Hawaii state champ. And I asked her, I said, you ever thought about wrestling in college? And she says, I thought about it, but Liberty doesn't have a team. I said, well, they do now. So I went over and started the wrestling team, and she became a national champion her first year. She's going for her 4th national championship this season.
So this is current. This is not like past.
Yeah, it's. I started the program. I left the program about 18 months ago when I took a job as a police officer in Charlottesville, Virginia, and now I actually am proud to say I have just started the first women's wrestling club in the Central Virginia area. So I'm going to be having middle school and high school girls come through and compete alongside their male counterparts and learn the sport of wrestling.
How exciting is that? That is so cool. I'm not sure if it's a secret, but that's so cool, because the fact is that you actually brought out the fact that, think about it. Here you knew the women didn't have a program. You took your skill set. You found another person who would immediately, capitalize on the strength of how good she was or is,
right.
And then you maximize that immediate growth and exposure. Love it. Oh, okay. So not only are you giving back and paying it forward, you're also helping the strength of, wrestling. My husband was a wrestler in high school. And, that it's not how strong you are and it's how big you are. It's how fast and the technique and how strategic you are in taking the person down and the moves, right? And it's just amazing how, from self-defense, for a capacity to understand your strengths that you don't know you have. I just think it's fantastic of, what you got going to the table. So how exciting. Okay. One of the things that I wanted to go through and really talk about, it says in your bio that you were the Grand National Champion in 2017 to 2018, and that you finished third in 2016 and 2017. How exciting! 2 times champion coach. If you have masters in theology. What is theology? If I could be so blunt.
Yeah, theology for me, it's just the study of God, and and the way I approach it from the divinity aspect and the academics is the study of God and how we as humans relate to a monotheistic power.
Very cool. I think we need more of that. We really need more people caring and loving and human compassion for each other. So whatever that is, in whatever capacity, just the belief of feeling good and helping each other. How cool is that? I know a university here in Chapman University here in California had a peace studies program. Only 3 universities in the whole United States has a peace study program. And I believe that is part of the core of you believing in keeping groundedness and keeping your life whole and keeping it quality of life. So love that. Well, it makes sense why you're in and helping this whole program that's going with it. And you talked about with your father here, and you have the Introduction to the Private Investigation, 3rd edition of the original Private Investigations Handbook and Almanac, 3rd edition, Investigation of Missing and Exploited Children, the Gateway to Child Sex Trafficking. That has got to be a eye-opener for people to walk in and say, this is what you have, and this is where, how it looks at. So talk to me a little bit about that. I think that's so incredible to have a book out that can really help identify, and where can people get a book like that?
So right now we're actually distributing through, we just finished our 3rd edition. We'll be distributing through every major bookseller. But what the book does is it outlines and we're very open with a 6-step process that we at Saved in America use to rescue missing children and runaways that are in danger of being trafficked. It outlines a 6-step process, as well as put out case studies and follow-ups and everything we do every step of the way.
Okay, so not only do I want a copy, I want to review the book and want to put it in a magazine because the whole premise of NAWRB was to get this information out to the sphere of influence. And if you don't know the rules of the game, you can't play the game. And knowing this information, identifying it on airplanes, identifying what's out there, who your resources are, how you can help each other is so powerful. And so can you get it on Amazon and all the different major networks right now, or major platforms, or no?
Yes, you can actually. We have you can get the You can get the first edition you want, the second or the third. It's whichever one you want. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll just send you one. I have one. I can go ahead and send you one.
That would be, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to make sure that we get that out there, because that is, you know, you heard about the woman on the airplane about, she asked to go to the bathroom. She wrote on lipstick on the mirror. The very attentive stewardess saw it, and they had the police waiting for the gentleman as they walked off the airplane. And had that not happened, she was caught in the middle, and they came out with statistics, and they said there was 50,000 that actually go on a commercial airlines that you see, and you don't even know they're there.
Hiding in plain sight.
It's unbelievable. So what led you to where you are now? How did you become so passionate about the issues surrounding sex trafficking and child exploiting?
So it started with an article. I remember my dad was sitting there reading the newspaper, and he read an article about Brittany Drexel and her story. It's actually outlined in our book, and where she was transported, and when she tried to run away from her traffickers, she was killed, and her body was fed to alligators afterwards. And I read that out, and I thought that is terrible. And at the same time, there was also an article a little way down about Navy SEALs going overseas to rescue children overseas that were involved in the sex trade. And I remember talking, and we said, I bet you Brittany was part of this in the United States. So we looked into it and realized that it was a growing epidemic in the United States, but we couldn't find one organization that had boots on the ground that were actually taking upon themselves to go out and conduct the operations necessary to rescue our own children, our own U.S. born children.
What year was that?
That was 2014.
So we're talking 5-6 years ago.
Yep. It seems like a long time ago, but it's really not that long ago. And since then, we've already rescued over 238 children.
That's incredible. Thank you. Well, the thing is that, it's like the gentleman I met. He's done 39 undercover operations. In the last one, they did a raid. They had rescued over 50-some women and little children. And none of them were 16, so can't go quite there. And at the same time, to keep it undercover, even though it was covered on the major network, no faces were shown, no names were shown, were talked about, but just that it happened, and they were able to save. And the idea is that, communication and networks and collaboration and leveraging the resources is truly where this information has to be put out there. And that's why I'm so honored to have you on the call, besides a phenomenal guy that, took upon an action to do that. And this is where, NAWRB was never in this space before. And I became Know the Rules of the Game podcast was to make sure that this information gets out, because we all can do our part. We all can identify, we all can see, we all can do. So let's go to rule number one. You had mentioned rule number one was know who the enemy.
Correct.
So define how can we know who the enemy is, or what does it look like?
So the enemy in the child sex trafficking world, domestically, is what we call the evil triad of the street gangs, the prison gangs, and the cartels. That is who the enemy is here inside the United States.
We heard that: street gang, prison gangs, and cartels. Know who the enemy is. Okay, second, you talked about children, that impact. Define what the second rule is.
Yeah, so the second rule is know how these children are coerced. And it's not like the movies or even how how it's been done internationally, where they're not taken from the side of the road or anything. It is actually, they are seduced through social networking. That is the primary way that the children fall prey here in the United States. That little thing in your hand called a cell phone that everybody has now, and all those social media apps, that's how they're targeted.
So what if, I'm just thinking out loud, what if we have a campaign that we want to get everyone involved to know every day that we have natural disasters? I'm going to go way off on a limb here. And no one knows what to do, where to go, or who to call in case they're involved in a natural disaster. And flood, fire, tornadoes, hurricanes, you name it, here in the United States. Everyone thinks FEMA, that's to stop the bleeding, doesn't fix the bleeding.
Right.
And the consumer doesn't understand that that there's $40,000 in grant. I'm sorry, not grant, but $40,000 in loans and $200,000 in loans you can get from the SBA at less than 2% interest or 2% interest. That's free money, and you don't have to make the first payment for a year, and it's free to apply, and it's free to process. And if you need the money, use it. If you don't have to pay it back. But 2% is unheard of. So my thought is that same campaign of getting the information into every single consumer, every single professional in the industry. I mean, here I've been in the business 30 years of real estate. I knew nothing about that you had natural disaster funds until 4 or 5 years ago when the head of the NWC, who's the advisor, President, Congress, and SBA, called me up and said, Desiree, we need your help to get this information out there. And I'm thinking to myself going, okay, how can we help get the same information that you're asking for into the hands of everyone to understand how to identify, know who the enemy is, know how to, that the children for social media. So in elementary school, we immediately teach the children and the parents that they need to make sure that they monitor and put on special devices to or identify that these are not right, and these are things that we're targeting our children who are in areas. It doesn't mean that they have to be poor. It doesn't mean they have to be rich. Everyone's a target. And like we talked about pre-call, the elementary, the middle school, the high schools, they're targeted in that space. What do you think?
I mean, that's something like that would be, groundbreaking in the fight against child sex trafficking in the United States.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? We're definitely going to do that. So see, this is the whole idea of why the rules of the game is so important, because we want to make sure that we all can identify. Okay, so third is the recruiting game. How do you talked about the social media, how the children are coerced through social media. Identify the third rule a little bit more in depth.
So the third rule is who your recruiters are and where they operate. So yes, they use the social media apps on the phone, but when it comes to the person face-to-face contact, they actually are. There's a recruiter in every public middle and high school in the public education system in the United States, and they're all gang members or aspiring gang members, and they infiltrate these schools, and that is how they meet these children that have been coercing on social media face-to-face.
Okay, so I'm sitting here thinking, scratching my head going, the old act is to be aspiring gang member. I think is actually more dangerous than the actual gang member, because they want to prove their point. It's like the old, if you think of, I want to be part of a sorority or fraternity. I want to be part of a club, or I want to be part of, a gang, whatever. They're all you want to be part of. And you all have to go above and beyond to prove yourself, to prove your worthiness, quote, to be in that group. The concept of is mind-blowing, that you're going to have someone who's going to do whatever they can. And if you have a aspiring gang member who's not yet there to kill someone, is what we normally would think, gang member do something to someone else and beat them up or kill them. But, okay, so they can't take it to that level, but that aspiring gang member can go out there and recruit people they're not involved in the sense that they're involved in just recruiting the people. They're not partake, let's say, in the action of it. They're still, being part of the gang to be associated because it's like, okay, just you're recruiting people. Wow.
Yeah, and they don't see it as, recruiting a person. They don't see it as recruiting a child. They actually see it as recruiting a new commodity to use.
Yeah, hence it's the second largest business in the United States, I found out about 3 months ago. You hear that? The second largest business in the United States is human trafficking. That is, okay. So how has child exploitation and human trafficking increased over the years, and why? Kind of answer that one.
So, right, but a lot of the increase in domestic child sex trafficking comes from, and it's a little bit of a touchy subject, but the first thing and the most obvious is the advent of social media. The cell phones. Everybody carries one now. They have access to all, the whole entire. There's more processing capability on the phone in my hand than most laptops we have now. And kids are getting younger now. They're getting them. I see kids walking around in the town where I work. They're 9, 10 years old walking around with iPhones, and a lot of it also comes from the fact that parents don't know what's going on their child's phone. A lot of times, they don't know the passwords. They don't look through the phone. They don't see the apps. The federal government, and I'm a miss on who actually put the PSA out, but there was a PSA on the apps to look for on your child's phone. I recommend Googling that, looking that up, because that is they put all the apps on there that children are using, including your Instagram, your Snapchat, your Telegram app. But Telegram scares me the most because that's a message goes out, and once somebody reads the message, it counts down, and then it's gone forever. And then, of course, the classic Facebook. Believe it or not, even though Facebook's kind of fallen off with the younger generation, Facebook Messenger, we find, is still one of the top messaging apps.
Well, you can steal it. You can. In the professional world, I'm a huge, obviously component of LinkedIn with, I have thousands of followers on LinkedIn. As a LinkedIn curator, someone who they come in and ask all the time for information. But when you if you think about it, when you can duplicate someone else's and steal someone else's identity and then transmit through the Messenger app, and the premise of the information through Facebook is always trying to, come up in, it's a non, business environment, yet obviously people use it to massive business, but it is the greatest platform for the human touch of business, where LinkedIn is more of a professional end of, corporate structure, and people actually police others for putting non, business type, on LinkedIn, where Facebook is allowed to go very wild, open, talk about anything and everything, and when you can easily steal that, there's a problem. If you look at it, LinkedIn is now owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft is an operating system, so they have a lot of business clientele, where Facebook's business model is made on selling information. So very different business structure. So obviously it's going to have a lot of different things. But no, that's okay. So this is making my head spin even more. Talk about, okay, so I'm going to dive a little deep into this podcast. There's programs that I didn't even know existed, like the United States Advisory Council, and another one that you sit on that's part of Homeland Security. Talk to me a little bit about those.
Yeah, so there's, obviously you have some of the government organizations, like we're part of the Human Trafficking Information Exchange Committee through the Office of Human Smuggling and Trafficking at the Department of Homeland Security in D.C. we've traveled there 3 times now to go meet with a lot of the other organizations that are involved in the fight against human smuggling and trafficking in the United States. And we actually are the only one in the room that have boots on the ground and are fighting in the child sex trafficking trade. And we found out through this committee and through research that even currently we're still the only organization in the United States that has went out, put people on the ground, and helped coordinate a rescue with law enforcement to rescue a child. We're the only one.
Like I said, this information has got to get out, and that's just why we're here, to make sure that this pod being obviously broadcast in several different venues, but making sure that this information is brought to the forefront. It sounds like not only the action item, making sure that action and execution. Now that the information's out and we're getting more information out and we're getting, the ideas is that we can help leverage our platform and the people that we connect to and the industries we're part of, that we need more of you and more of how do we get people on the boots on the ground. So obviously there's a lot of risk. Obviously there's a lot of putting your life out there and support mechanisms. How do people get involved to help that out?
So there's SaveThatAmerica.org. If you go on there, there's links for how to help. There's also links for, and this is kind of goes along with the premise of when we started Save That America. We have a different, I guess you would call them the pillars of what we do here at Save That America. And this is to lay the groundwork for anybody who's thinking about wanting to help out with us, or to donate for us. We don't charge the parents any money for our services. Mm-hmm. We've never charged a parent for anything. 2, everybody who's with us is 100% volunteer. Nobody takes a salary here at Save That America. We're all volunteers. We're all retired military special operations, either current or retired law enforcement. We're all licensed private investigators. We have all the insurances, permits, so we're all professionals in our industry. Some of us retired from another industry, and some of us worked full-time in another one and became a professional in this one. And then, so all of that, joined together shows, is something we can bring to the table and tell people, hey, this is, when you want to help Save That America, this is what you're helping. We're the heart of the people that come with this organization, whether you're in active duty Save That America or a reserve we have reserves all over the nation. It's people that give and do almost a whole nother full-time job out of their heart for trying to save these children.
Wow, I'm looking at your website right now, and hashtag child saved, not sold. Very cool. And, former Navy SEALs, I can go down the list. As far as, like you said, all different kinds of relationships, all different kinds of services that have been in there. And this is, one of the things that I know about veterans is that they are the best at teamwork. The transition of coming out of the service is the collective wholeness. They understand the team, the impact, second to none. And that camaraderie and impact that you had and formed never leaves you. You think about natural disasters. There's an organization that has got 80-some thousand volunteer veterans to come and rescue. I think it was Hurricane, the one in Harvey and Irma that were the biggest that I can remember off current, that they came in, and the groves that were, and then CNN honored them with one of the heroes. It's fantastic. Didn't even know they existed. To mobilize, in 24 hours, 80,000 former veterans, not former active veterans that had retired to come in. That was crazy. So fantastic. So thank you. So moving forward, wow, sorry, in honor of National Human Trafficking Prevention Month in January, what piece of advice would you give to those to avoid sex trafficking or being mindful of it around our everyday lives?
I think one is, so part of child sex trafficking and preventing it, and is a little bit of it is aimed towards a very specific group, and it's parents. We found that parents are the #1 guardian against child sex trafficking in the United States, and it goes through. My biggest advice is for every parent or guardian is to know what is on your child's phone, know the social media they're going through. On my day job as a police officer, I've gone into a house to try to help a missing juvenile in my day job, and I was told that I couldn't go into the child's room, and the parent couldn't give me permission because that's the child's room, and we give them their own space. And my biggest in my private, life as Saved in America, my biggest thing is, as long as they're your child and you're living in your house, they don't have a private space. You need to know what your children are doing at all times, know the passwords to everything, and be open about it, and tell them why. Tell them exactly what's out there. It's much better to have that tough conversation now than for us to have to rescue a child. I would much rather us stop that. And as much as we like to grow, and Save America is growing across the country, we have reserves now in every region of the United States, and our goal is to have one in every state. Our ultimate goal is that we can close the doors of Save America because we don't have to exist anymore.
What a phenomenal thought. I have to reflect. I have 4 children, and whether they live at home or not, it's like you said that you got to know what they're doing. I think that in education in our elementary school, that part of the packet needs to be the birds and the bees conversation. It needs to be that you sit down and have the human trafficking conversation. I think if you have that at an early enough age, because it's one and the same if you think about sex education, that if you add value to the human trafficking side at the same time and put them together, that was not paraphrased well, Desiree, that you'll help hopefully not only educate the parents, but why they need to get more involved and not be too busy to not be involved. Guilty as charged. Fortunately, my children are all adults, but the flip of the side is that you also have to be on point to educate adults and the children that can know at the same time, so they can help each other be sounding boards to understand that something just doesn't feel right, something's not right, something is alerting that not that you're on guard to where you're mentally on high alert 24/7, but you have to have a place to where you can understand each other and look at each other that this is not right, and act on it and not just let it go. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my composure together here. The quote of the day, I think this is so fitting, by Christopher Reeves. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. From the capacity of parenting, the children, co-workers, drawing the line, whether it's your right to get involved or not to get involved. But the idea is that you embody what Christopher Reeves went through, and falling off a horse, and what he, aspired and did all those years after that. It's just an amazing feat. And, to pull that strength and what we're talking about today, get involved, show up, be there. And I think the tip of the day is really about, I think you defined it as part of the rules of the game, is the tip is be on alert and know your surroundings. And if you see something that doesn't quite feel right, I always say, wherever you go, be heard and seen. So if you don't think something looks quite right, ask, or at least, make it inquisitive. Don't just walk by and be glued to the phone, right?
Yes.
And see the side. So in closing, how do we get a hold of you? Give the name of the website again, spell it out, and again, repeat how they can get involved in any of the multiple platforms that we have that you're doing for human trafficking.
Yes, so it's savedinamerica.org, savedinamerica.org. If you go to .com, it takes you to a documentary about animals. So if you get to that, you've gone to the wrong one. It's
most important. I love animals.
Most important. But we are at savedinamerica.org. Go on there. There's a link for if you want to help. There's also a big old blue button for donating. We also have what we call an ambassador program, which is, those who, feel called to make a monthly donation to help against this fight. You can do that too as well, or donate now for a one-time. Like we said, we operate 100% on donations and gifts, and we give is as much, if very close to all the money goes right back into operations for saving these children. And just to give a couple of numbers out there, just so everybody knows real quick, it costs us about $5,000 to $6,000 to save a child. And the gap we fill for law enforcement, if law enforcement were to do it, it would cost $65,000 just in hours. And we do it for one-tenth of the cost, and 100% of our the money that we get, we try to put straight towards that cost of rescuing a child. If you want to get a hold of us too, there's a contact info on there. We're on Facebook, Saved in America. We're on Instagram, Saved in America. If you want to bring awareness, hashtag child saved, not sold.
Fantastic. My suggestion to you is that actually I think you should be on LinkedIn, because more businesses would see it, understand from a human element of Facebook, but from a business aspect, people would have more awareness and actually could see it more often on your posts and what's being done from that aspect. And I want to close out with twofold. One is the U.S. Department of State. If you go to state.gov, there's actually a council on the United States Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. They just put out an annual report. It talks about the people who, some of the council members actually are survivors of human trafficking. So obviously they came out and thanked the survivors who could give them the impact of what's going on. The last report came out in 2019. They're going to be putting one out hopefully in Q2 of 2020. So please go check that out, and as a great resource. And on behalf of NAWRB, Know the Rules of the Game trademark, we're here to bring the information to you first and foremost to make sure that we all understand the checkbooks for quality of life, because if you don't believe it, someone someone who is out there through a friend of a friend or acquaintances has been targeted, has been victimized in some capacity. As you heard, every single middle school and high school has a person who's out there recruiting. As the second largest business out there, the more information that NAWRB gets, we can build a better infrastructure to get this information out there. So on behalf of myself, Desiree Patno, and Know the Rules of the Game podcast, thank you very much. And you can watch this podcast on nawrb.com/podcast. And we are also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, very heavily on LinkedIn. and follow our posts that we post almost every single day, and making sure that you can get our newsletters every Friday and get our information and our magazine that I just offered Josh, as you heard, to review his book and have it part of our magazine. So thank you very much for your valuable time, Joshua, and for the valuable work that you're doing. And I can't wait to see what we can do together to get this information out to the masses as part of the work that we do here at NAWRB. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything.
You're quite welcome, and you have an incredible day. All right. Thank you, everyone, to our listeners. Without you, this is why it's here. So thank you all, and have a great one.